Hey guys, welcome back to Dude We Can Fix It. Today I'm going to show you how to diagnose and replace an alternator on your car, truck, tractor, any sort of vehicle or equipment. Alternators are all basically the same, so let's check it out. First we're going to set our multimeter to DC, then we're going to probe the battery terminals to see what we get. We have 12.5 volts. Now let's go down to the alternator. We have our charging lead here. You can see where it hooks into the solenoid on top of the starter. So we're going to follow that back and probe there and on the housing of the alternator. And you see we have 12.5 volts here as well. Now with the tractor running, I can tell you that we still have 12.5 volts. I'm not going to actually start it up because it's very loud, but this is what you need to do to verify that your alternator is not producing any voltage. So we're going to disconnect the negative battery terminal. Now that that's removed, we can go ahead and start taking the alternator off. We'll need a 11mm socket to remove the charging lead. So we have a 13mm wrench. We're going to take off the nut holding the top mounting bolt. Now we're going to use a 13mm wrench to loosen up the bottom mounting bolt. We'll have to back it up on the other side to keep it from spinning. Now we're going to reposition the camera so we can watch as I take the belt off. So I'm going to use a hammer to move the alternator and allow me to get some slack on the belt to remove that. Now I can finish removing the top mounting bolt and pull the alternator out. There we have it. That's the old alternator. Let's go grab the new one. We have the new alternator. We see that it has a voltage regulator and two terminals on it. I'm going to rotate it upwards so that those terminals are easier to access. We'll guide our bolt through and then we'll get our spacers, which the alternator is a little thinner on the mounting part, so I'm going to use a couple nuts and washers to make up that extra space. So now that we have the top bolt in, we'll go ahead and set the lower bolt in loosely. We'll tighten it up with our 13mm socket. So we'll move the alternator inwards a little bit. That will allow us to put our belt on. So now we'll pull the alternator back out to get the belt nice and snug and start tightening up our bolts. Alright, so we're going to go ahead and put the nut on the end of our top bolt and get that kind of snug. This bolt does not have a square head on the other side, so I'm going to use some channel locks to hold it in place while I continue to tighten it up. Do note that you don't want this to be too tight at this point because you still need to adjust the alternator out to have tension on the belt and then tighten up the bolts on the bottom. And then you'll come back and finish tightening the top. So now we're going to pull the alternator outwards to make sure we have good tension on the belt. Then we're going to tighten up the bottom bolt. So once again we have our 13mm socket and backup wrench. We'll go ahead and tighten up the bottom bolt. And then there's one more bolt behind there that we also need to tighten up on the adjustment bracket. I'm going to use a pry bar to pull the alternator outwards while we tighten up that bolt. And that will make sure that we have tension on the belt. It helps if you can grow 2 extra hands. Now check the tension on your belt, make sure that it doesn't have too much slack in it. Now we can finish tightening up the mounting bolt on the top. Once your alternator is snugly in place, we can grab our charging lead and hook it to the battery positive terminal on the back of the alternator. The new alternator has a 10mm nut that will hold the charging lead on, so we'll grab a 10mm socket. Verify that it is nice and snug, does not wiggle or move around. Let's go ahead and reconnect the negative battery terminal. Once you get it on there, go ahead and tighten it up with a socket. You'll want to grab your terminal and wire and make sure that it is hooked up securely to the battery and does not wiggle free. So now we're going to crank the engine up and test our voltage. With the engine running, you should be getting somewhere around 14 to 14.5 volts. If you're still only getting 12.5 volts, you're having an issue with your alternator not charging. Well, I hope you enjoyed this video and I hope that it was very informative for you. Please give us a thumbs up, subscribe to our channel, and turn on your bell notifications for future videos. And as always, dude, we can fix it.